Hey guys, welcome back to my networking basics course. Today we're going to be going over internet basics. All these labs and information can be found at the link in the description below. Make sure you check that out. You can also download a copy of Packet Tracer from Cisco's website, or I've included one in there as well. So right now we're going to go over the OSI model. The OSI model is important because it helps us visualize how data is passed and processed between devices. So as you can see here, I've set it up. It's got these 7 layers. Starting from the top, we've got the application layer. It's program interaction with the user or services. Then we've got the presentation layer, like visual, audio, kind of like data translation. And we have the session layer for inter-host communication. Next is the transport layer. This is where you would hear things like TCP, UDP, segment, and ports. Moving down to the internet layer, that's where you would hear things like routers and packets and IP addresses. Further down is the data link layer. This is where we would have our switches or hubs and frames or MAC addresses. And finally, the bottom layer is the physical layer, like Ethernet, fiber, radio. This is basically how we're going to send that message across the network, what path it's going to take. So here I've got this model set up. So on one side we have a sending device, and on the other side we have a receiving device. You notice from the sending device, as data is going down, we're going to be encapsulating it or wrapping it up. And then on the receiving device, as data is coming up, we're going to be de-encapsulating it or unwrapping it. So if this device wanted to send a message, it would start up here at the application layer with its data. It would pass that down to the presentation layer, to the session layer. When it hits the transport layer is going to wrap it up and throw a segment header on it, which might have information such as port numbers. Then it'll pass it down to the internet layer, which is going to throw a packet header on it. That would have things like source and destination IP addresses. And then it'll pass that down to the data link layer, which is going to throw a frame header and a frame trailer on it. That would have things such as source and destination MAC addresses. Finally, the data link layer will pass it down to the physical layer, which will send it across whatever our medium is as ones and zeros. It'll be received on the other end at the physical layer, which will pass it up to the data link layer. The data link layer will read the destination MAC address in the frame header, and it'll check some information in the frame trailer to make sure the data is still good, and then it'll pass that up to the internet layer. The internet layer is going to unwrap or get rid of the frame header and trailer, and it's going to look at the packet header at the destination IP address, make sure that it's the right device that this message was meant for. Then it's going to pass that up to the transport layer. The transport layer, once again, is going to unwrap it a little more, get rid of the packet header, and look at the segment header. This is where it'll determine what port it needs to be sent to internally. Then it'll pass it up to the session layer, presentation layer, and finally the application layer, and the message has been successfully received. So that was the OSI model and a really brief overview of it. I highly recommend that you go and study more about it. It's very important in networking. It helps us understand how messages traverse devices and networks. And more importantly, it's good to know when it comes to troubleshooting, so that you can determine, hey, maybe I need to look on the device at the transport layer because of this symptom that's going wrong. Or hey, maybe it's just a physical connection and I just need to make sure that my cables aren't broken. So that was our first lesson in the Internet Basics section. Up next, we'll go over some IP. So I hope that you stick around and I hope you enjoyed this.